Before we get into today's video, I actually want to give a shout out over to Dynamite Comics because right now they're celebrating their 20th anniversary and they're doing something really awesome for a good cause. And you know me, I'm all about good causes. That good cause is the Hero Initiative. For those that do not know about the Hero Initiative, it's a charity whose sole purpose is to give back to those comic creators, writers, artists, letterers, colorists, whoever that have enriched our lives over the years, and is a way to help those people who have fallen into medical or financial need. And in order to raise money for this, they're putting a metric ton of comics on Humble Bundle right now that you can get for as little as 20 bucks. That's right, you can get all of the Red Sonja, both classic and modern. You can get all of the Vampirella, both classic and modern. You can pick up John Carter comics, Deja Thoris. You can pick up Kevin Smith's Green Hornet. You can pick up Jennifer Blood and Ninjets by Garth Ennis. You can even pick up some of the old Evil Dead comics like Ash versus the Evil Dead or Army of Darkness. This will give you access to over 100 different omnibus and trades in digital format that you could literally read well into the next 20 years. If you're somebody like myself who is relatively new to Dynamite Comics and you want to get into it, this is honestly the best way humanly possible to get some of the best Dynamite comics that have ever been released. Once again, Kevin Smith's Green Hornet, Gail Simone's Red Sonja. This is a murderer's row of the best comics Dynamite has ever put out, and you can get them all for as little as 20 bucks and help the people who have enriched the comics in our lives at the same time. There'll be a link in the description for this video as well as a pinned comment below. Go check it out and help out the Hero Initiative and yourself to the best of Dynamite Comics. With that said, let's get on to the video.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, we're going to be talking about Rise of the Powers of 10, number 5, written by Kieron Gillen, with art by Luciano Vecchio and color by David Curiel. So this is it. This is the finale of the Fall of the House of X and Rise of the Powers of 10. Technically, we had the finale of the Fall of the House of X the previous week, but this, with the end being the Rise of the Powers of 10, this is fully not just the end of Rise of Powers, but also the finale of the entire story arc. And it doesn't disappoint. Say what you will about what the X-Men comics individual of each other have become over the course of the last few months. And I've said this a lot. I feel like I probably say it too often, but it kind of became this deal where it felt like the main story arc here was what was really cooking, and everything else just kind of seemed to be, I don't know, just not really hitting on all cylinders. And this just kind of further reiterates my point. Kieron Gillen has literally been holding this whole thing together, and it's not to say he's doing it by himself, but I feel like Kieron Gillen has brought his A game on this. And of course, Luciano Vecchio and David Curiel are a match made in heaven just about any day of the week. But we're not going to stand on ceremony on that because we have a lot to talk about, and honestly, not a lot of time to talk about it in. We get to see the final fight. This is the big Duke-a-roo between Jean Grey as the Phoenix and the Dominion Enigma. This fight is not going to go the way you might think it is. I mean, yeah, there's punchies and hits and kicks and elbows and all sorts of, that crazy nonsense, but it's not going to be exactly in the way you may imagine it to be. No, this is a fight across space and time, across all reality. And it's kind of funny how this all plays out, because the thing that, we were kind of hinted at and teased at, that when Enigma put the call out to the other Dominions, that they said, if the Phoenix returns, we will ride out for you, that we will be going hard in the paint across reality for you. We're gonna help you take the Phoenix down once and for all, because that's the Phoenix purpose. The Phoenix is there to destroy Dominions. So yeah, of course they're gonna jump in on this. But there's one problem with Enigma's plan that he didn't quite foresee. Game recognizes game, and Enigma is looking unfamiliar.
Game recognized game, and you looking kinda unfamiliar right now.
As far as they are concerned, Enigma is not like us. They are on some Drake-ish. When Enigma says the word Dominion, they feel like it just comes out wrong. It's because he's too concerned with earthly matters. A Dominion, by definition, is above and beyond space and time. They exist outside of it. Therefore, they don't have to be concerned with the comings and goings of, us mere mortals because they can't be touched, and Enigma can still be touched. If he is going to be concerned with things that are beneath him, then he's not truly a Dominion as he likes to proclaim that he is. Yes, sure, he's done the homework. Yes, sure, he's filled out the paperwork, but he has not been living the lifestyle of a Dominion. Honestly, the Dominions basically gave him the same conversation I think that a lot of us as kids probably had growing up. If you are as old as I am, are you going to be outside or are you staying in the house? Because if you come back in the house, you got to stay in the house. You can't go back outside. And that's exactly what is going on here. They're telling him, you have done this to yourself. And if you are going to antagonize the Phoenix, the very thing that can destroy us all, then you're left to your own devices. We're not here to rock with you on this one. As a matter of fact, they make it known. They do not want the smoke from Jean Grey. They do not want the smoke from the Phoenix. So therefore, they're like, hey, look, we gonna see ourselves out. We got you back, way back. You carry on, y'all keep doing what it is you're doing, and we will be over here. We will see you soon, never, always. They even recognize that Jean is 100% that bitch, and they don't want any of those kinds of problems. Therefore, Enigma has to fight Jean solo dolo, and this is in Jean's favor, though not as much as some might think. Yes, she's the Phoenix, but she is also the host now of a Phoenix that is brand new and is still not quite up to snuff. But even with that, Jean is the type of character who can overcome just about any type of odd that she goes up against. Jean Grey, because of the events of X-Men Forever and Fall of X as a whole, she now has every mutant as a part of her because of the White Hot Rune, and she uses this to great effect, literally laying an ultra combo on Enigma. But even that is not enough. This is a more cerebral fight than just throwing punches, kicks, and elbows, as I stated earlier. I really like the fact that we finally get to see Enigma in a more humanoid form. I mean, yes, we have seen him in a humanoid form, but this time he actually looks more like the sinister phalanx looking character we saw in Powers of 10. I was always waiting, like, when is this particular version of him going to show up? And it was something that kind of felt like it was forgotten about, and yet here he is, granted with a few more symbols on him than what we might have initially been used to seeing. I'm here for it. I love it. I absolutely love it. As this fight rages across history, mostly Jean's, at first, we see that the Enigma is trying to reach back, same as what he did with Hope Summers over in the X-Men Forever story arc. Enigma is going back to various points in Jean's history and trying to undo time, whereas Jean is revisiting those same points in time and undoing what Enigma has done. The point where he tries to turn away Charles Xavier so that Jean does not get recruited to the Xavier Institute. How he has gone back to the point in Cyclops' life when he was with Madeline Pryor, and in an attempt to leave her, he suddenly implants all of Jean's actual memories into Madeline, thus making her just Jean Grey in her entirety, and thus Cyclops doesn't leave her, and that kind of just leaves Jean in a weird space herself. We also see another point where he causes Jean to not catch on to Cyclops and Emma's affair during Grant Morrison's New X-Men. She doesn't find out until much later, which makes it even worse for Jean to experience. We even see how he manipulates the events of Judgment Day to try to prey on Jean Grey's hubris, because during the events of Judgment Day, the Celestial Progenitor found her wanting. He judged her poorly for her actions during the Phoenix Saga, even though technically she didn't actually do the things that she was being judged for. But in judging her fairly, this is supposed to embolden her and make her feel as though she is somehow better than what she already thought she was in the first place, which is kind of crazy to me. But then also the time displaced Jean from the Bendis era of all new X-Men is replaced at a later point in time. There's lots of multiple little points in Jean's history that are jumped onto that Enigma tries to change in some way, and Jean is just swatting them away like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure style. And in saying that, that's not even a oversimplification of what's going on here, because when Enigma realizes affecting only Jean's history is not an effective way to try and take her down as the Phoenix, to completely wipe the Phoenix away from all existence so that Jean has nothing to fight him with, we also see that he goes across multiple points in the X-Men's history, going across from the very beginning to the 1960s when the X-Men first hit the scene, back when the X-Men were honestly, very incredibly mid. Even going through the Phoenix Saga, the Dark Phoenix Saga, Onslaught, AVX, Death of X, Inferno, you name it, pretty much any major point in the X-Men's history, Enigma is trying to manipulate it in some way, and at every turn, Jean is shutting him down. And the reason why this is of such significance is because, as Enigma points out, it only takes Jean to miss one of those instances for him to win and for her to lose. But what kind of brings this whole story full circle is about a couple of issues prior, we saw that Xavier had went back to the time early in Moira's 10th life, right before her X gene would become active on her 13th birthday, and was planning to unalive her, so that way it would completely negate all of the craziness that happened with Krakoa and Orcus and all that stuff. The timeline would be drastically different than what we had been reading up to this point. But we didn't really know what Xavier had implanted in Moira's mind when he changed his own mind about unaliving her. All we knew is that maybe this would come up at some point before the story is over, and that maybe he would use it as a way to try to convince Moira to do the right thing. And to be fair, that's pretty much what happens here. Xavier is sitting Moira down no differently than she did with him during House of X and Powers of 10. But in this case, Xavier is trying to appeal to her better nature, despite the fact that now she's a cold, calculating cyborg. And the thing that I kind of feel is probably the one space where this story does kind of falter a little bit is that it does seem kind of easy for Moira to be convinced to do the right thing. And I feel this is largely a problem, not necessarily because Kieran Gillen didn't do a good job of writing it out. I just feel like we didn't really get a good effort from the X office overall to give us more time with Moira. Yes, we got her in Inferno. Inferno by Jonathan Hickman is largely about her. And then 10 Deaths of Wolverine, despite being about Wolverine, or at least the title implying that it is about Wolverine, and it kind of is for the most part, it's actually more about Moira. And I feel like people who didn't keep up with that story arc will probably miss a lot of what is even happening here. But also, it's just the issue that Moira was kept such a secret that you didn't really see her in any X books after House of X, save for a random issue of X Factor, and I think maybe a random issue of Immortal X-Men at one point or another. But yeah, I just feel like if we would have not tried to keep Moira so sequestered away that she becomes this mystery, she ends up becoming too much of a mystery, and then it comes time to you move this story along, and now we're just kind of sitting here like, yeah, all right, hurry up, let's wrap this shit up and get her up out of here. And I mean, like I said, it's not to say that it doesn't work. It does work, but it would have worked so much better had Moira not been obfuscated so much. And once again, especially knowing that the original plan was not even for Moira to turn evil, it makes me wonder how this could have gone so much differently. But even going from that, yes, Xavier is able to sit her down and convince her that if she does throw in her lot with the Dominion, Enigma, she will ultimately be throwing in her lot with a Sinister. And while she kind of seems to have not been too keyed in on that aspect at first, which is kind of weird. I felt like, she should have been able to tell that it was a Sinister when she first encountered him, but that's another story altogether. The whole idea here is that she realizes that if she throws in her lot with Nathaniel Essex, she will have to live with the guilt of what she has done for the rest of her life, having handed over the world to Enigma on a silver platter. A Sinister, a Nathaniel Essex no less. And it's kind of funny how this is the thing that turns her around. And she does ultimately turn around on it. She allows Jean to access her mind, and Jean is able to use this as a jumping on point to find Enigma, pinpoint his location, and completely wipe him out across the entire space-time continuum. Now, as a result of this, Moira is unalived in the present, at least in terms of the time and space that she is existing in right now in Rise of the Powers of 10 number 5. No matter what point in time Enigma goes to, and we see a data page that basically gives us everything we know about how far-reaching this is, it doesn't matter to what point in time Enigma goes to. It doesn't matter what issue of X-Men or Excalibur or X-Factor, Alpha Flight, X-Force, whatever, it does not matter where he goes. He is unalived right then and there. He's done. He's toast. Finito. The Enigma is no more, and his corpse has been spread across the entire space-time continuum as a warning to any future outsiders who try and come and pull the same Fox News bullshit that he tried to perpetrate in this story arc. Now, when you get to the end of all this, there's a lot of housekeeping that needs to be done, so let's go ahead and jump into the bulk of it. The things I really want to focus on are, well, for one, Charles Xavier is apprehended by the authorities, pretty much letting us know, and I want to make sure I point this out too, because I feel like this might go missed. These guys look pretty generic, but they do kind of vaguely look like the same guards we saw in the X-Mansion and a lot of the From the Ashes stuff. Not precisely, but close enough that I'm willing to say that it is a very safe assumption. Charles Xavier, as we have long thought, Charles Xavier is who we thought he was. He is Inmate X, most likely, paying for the crimes that he has perpetrated in an effort to, take down Orcus and the Dominion from the inside. And yeah, that's that on that. There's really nothing more to say there because we don't really know much more about what's going to be going on with Inmate X other than the Xavier Institute is going to be Charles's new prison. So there you go. Everybody was so worried that the X-Mansion would be the X-Men's new prison, but no, it's just Charles's. It's okay. Everything's gonna be fine. Now I've said that, we also know that the timeline is not reset. I know a lot of people were worried that it was gonna be all about time travel and undoing the Krakoan age. No, all of this stuff has still happened. The only thing about the timeline that has been reset is whether Moira is a mutant or not. Because of the burning away of Moira in this particular instance when Enigma just completely eradicated her from existence, what actually happened in this? Well, now Moira is no longer a mutant. And in a way, this actually pays off Destiny's remarks from House of X #2. When Destiny says you will get to live 10 lives, an 11th if you make the right choice in the end. And this right here proves she ultimately made the correct choice. And we also know that timelines don't necessarily end when Moira dies. They reset for her, but those timelines still exist. We saw this in Dead X-Men. So this arc right here basically kind of makes all those other books now seem more consequential than what they might have initially had appeared. So we know that yes, these timelines still perpetrate after Moira's death. And while yes, Moira died, she has been given a new lease on life. As we see at the very final data page, we see the now portion, which is kind of referring to the Moira engine, but we also see that there's a line going to the outside of time and space portion of that data page, leading us over into our final page where we get to see it lead to a new timeline, which is cheekily referred to as Timeline Phoenix. So we know that she's outside of the white hot room because of where the arrow is pointing. There's a new timeline, she's in it, and it's kind of starting her off from her 13th birthday, and her X gene doesn't activate. And whether or not this will be readdressed at some point, I feel like it's safe to say that this is probably some other separate thing. Moira is gone. We're still moving on in time as if time is still happening. So there's no reset there. We're not going to before Krakoa. I think it's safe to say Moira has been put to bed and she has gotten to have her walk off into the sunset moment as probably what Jonathan Hickman originally intended. And while I know initially I thought, well, maybe, when Destiny was talking about her getting to live an 11th life, I thought she was referring to Moira's cyborg time because she technically died and she got an 11th life as a cyborg. But this was actually the true 11th life that Destiny had foretold. And we also know, kind of speaking back to, kind of outside of time and space stuff, the White Hot Room is still going to be the home of New Krakoa, and it's something we talked about with X-Men Forever. I kind of, used more about it there, so if you want to know more about my thoughts on it, you can go check it out up here. But yeah, ultimately, Krakoa will persist. It will still be a thing. There are still 200,000+ some odd mutants who are in the White Hot Room and are just finding a new way to live and exist in a place where they're largely free from persecution from humans, which I think is honestly the best outcome possible. Like, yeah, it's kind of like this is mutant heaven, basically. And it's a place that cannot be reached right now. It's actually stated that by normal means, even then, the White Hot Room is impenetrable. But there is one factor. There's one thing that I think will actually bring us back to that version of Krakoa, and it's the mention of the tiger. Now, the tiger might be an obscure reference for some people. What this actually is in reference to is the Tiger God. And the Tiger God, for those unfamiliar, it's the very same Tiger God that you might associate with Kunlun, over on the Iron Fist side of things, but maybe even more specifically with White Tiger. The very same Tiger God that kind of acts as a antithesis to the Phoenix Force herself. And not even really so much enemies directly, so much as they're just opposing primordial forces. You see, the Phoenix, and this actually kind of goes back to some things that happened in Al Ewing's Defenders Beyond, where Tigra kind of got to learn a little bit more about the Phoenix Force, and this was kind of here where Al Ewing set the table for the Phoenix Force, of course, obviously being fire and flame, being that force of light, but the Tiger was basically that force of darkness beyond it. This is kind of why the Phoenix and the Tiger Force, that they're opposites or enemies, but in reality, it's just the primordial forces at work. I don't know if this is going to play any into the Phoenix solo series by Stephanie Williams. However, I do think this is going to be something that is being set up to be addressed at a later date. I don't think this is going to be anything we're going to be jumping straight into. The funny thing about this is that the Tiger is one of those things that Al Ewing has been messing around with off and on, from his Ultimate series to his Mighty Avengers to his Defenders Beyond, that a lot of people, I would be shocked, like if you're like a diehard Al Ewing fan as I am, you probably saw the Tiger and that was boom, the first thing in your head. But I feel like there's a lot of people who may not be as well read on Al Ewing. I could easily see where you would see this and be like, what the f are they talking about? But yeah, even though technically Al Ewing isn't writing this is Kieran Gillen, but Al Ewing was a major driving force of a lot of the more recent X-Men stuff, and going back to, I would even dare say, the middle of the whole House of X era. Also, we can't discount that the Defenders Beyond series that Al Ewing wrote also play very heavily into the recent Resurrection of Magneto story arc, and even some other stuff going on with X-Men Red. Also, we know Sinister is in the wind. That's not a surprise. He knew that he was not long for this earth if he hung around. Once all the dust is settled, he basically skips off into the distance. Now, we know he is not gone forever. He did leave a wedding gift for Destiny and Mystique for the X-Men wedding special, which I kind of don't even want to say what it is. I actually highly recommend it. If you have any or half a mind to read the X-Men wedding special, it's a really good story that does a really good job of tying up a lot of the loose ends and even maybe give a little greater context to the relationship of Destiny and Mystique, especially if you're someone who is not well read on it. It's really cool, and what they do is very on brand for the two characters, and what Sinister gives them is something that's kind of funny in the grander scheme of things. But yeah, Sinister is still out there. I think it's safe to say we may not see him for a while because of the events of Fall of the House of X, Rise of the Powers of 10, and I think that's perfectly fine. We have gotten peak Sinister at this point, and I think it's a good thing for him to kind of take a knee for a while. This was as good an ending as you're gonna get. We still got 2 more X books after this. We still have Ms. Marvel Mutant Menace number 4, which will be the end of that series. And then we also have X-Men number 35, which is Legacy number X-Men number 700 that's coming up. That'll be the true ending of the House of X era and set up all the stuff that we will likely be seeing from the Ashes era side of things. So yeah, like I said, as far as endings to a story arc go, yes, all of this felt kind of rushed towards the end, but I feel like Kieran Gillen is one of the few people who could actually do rushed very well. When it comes down to it, I do think that Rise of the Powers of 10 was the stronger portion of the Fall of the House of X, Rise of the Powers of 10 stuff. It's kind of the opposite of what I felt about House of X and Powers of 10. I felt House of X was the stronger portion of the story. Rise of the Powers of 10 was the one that I liked it a lot, but I didn't like it as much as House of X. In this case, it's reversed. I like Fall of the House of X a lot. I love Rise of the Powers of 10 a lot. So that's just kind of where I'm at on that. That said, if you do want to know more about my thoughts on this, I'm actually going to be having a live stream with Dave Busing of Comic Book Herald this coming Thursday, May the 30th. It's going to start off around 5:15 Central Standard Time. So I hope I see you guys there. And we're going to be talking a lot more about the end of the Krakoan era. There'll be links in the description below, as well as a pinned comment, so you can hear us both talk about our musings about the end of the House of X era. But that said, I don't know, this is the end. This is it. You tell me what you thought about all this. If you think that this was a good ending, did you think they stuck it? Do you think they tripped up? when they got to the finish line? Did they dance just ahead of the end zone too much before crossing over and got stripped? Like, you tell me what you think. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.